Welcome along to an increasingly triumphant Six Nations takeaway with Carry Out Off Licence, Ireland's leading independent off licence. I'm Gavin Cooney, delighted to say that Eddie O'Sullivan is back with us again this week. Thanks, Eddie, along with Mick McCarthy, editor here at Balls.ie. Please do get your questions and your comments in for the lads. You can drop them in the comment box below or tweet us at Balls.ie. And I am going to start, lads, with a viewer question because they are much better than mine, from Nick Mallon. Lads, look, I know you're going to talk about the processes and the work-ons and what we can fix, but can we just talk about what a bloody brilliant weekend of rugby that was? Eddie, where were you? Where were you watching the weekend?
I watched the Ireland game actually in Cork, and it was the game of the tournament so far. I thought, in terms of, I think both sides were playing for their championship, and we won in the end. So Wales, the championship's over for them, and they knew that going in. I think there was an edge to the game that you'd expect. I thought the intensity was off the charts. For entertainment value, for the punches looking on, it was fantastic. And it was right there till the very end. It had everything. It was, you get those games every so often in the championship, but that to me was the game of the championship. I know there's a bit of excitement with Scotland beating England, but for me the Ireland game was the one. And it was very interesting, the contrasting styles of both teams. Ireland going route one, Warren ball, beating Warren at his own game, the power game, which worked really well for us. And I think there's a logic behind how that happened. And Wales not doing that, Wales changing away and actually being successful as well at it. So the game came down to the final play practically. So yeah, entertainment-wise, it was fantastic. Yeah.
As has happened, Mick, in 2 of the 3 Irish games so far, that it's come down to the right final play, the stop the interception and the second drop.
Which makes it like the most exciting Six Nations they can remember, and we're like living on the edge of our seats and we're living and dying with this team, and you kind of tend to like a team more when it's like that as well, because you just feel more emotionally
you get a sense of destiny as well,
that
like the drop goal in Paris and then the win last Saturday, like you're thinking maybe the planets are starting to align. Maybe 9 beckons. It's 9 years on. Maybe it's our year again. So you start when those small things go your way. That you start to think, now we're 2 games out now, and we're the only team left can win the Grand Slam. So that certainly sends a sense of fever around the camp.
Yeah. So we've got all that, but then on the other side of it, you've got the real worry about the fact that we've done it in that way both times so far in the 2 real games, I suppose.
You can only dodge so many bullets, before you get to wings.
Just go negative quickly.
Yeah, but look, if you go back to 2009, we dodged a number of bullets that year. Like, okay, we got off to a flyer against France in Croke Park. We got 3 great tries that day, and everyone kind of sat up. But if you go back to the 2 games that were really, 3 games that really were crunches that in 2009 that we got out of. If you remember, we beat England by 1 point in Croke Park. And I was at that game, and Brian O'Driscoll, probably shouldn't have been on the field. There was HIAs back then, because he was taking a really bad knock. And somehow he managed to ground the ball on the goal line to win the game.
Forwards try.
Forwards try. And then, remember up in Scotland, the game was kind of slipping away from us. And, it was on, and I remember at one stage there was a bomb kicked up, and it bounced between Tommy Bowe and the Scottish full-back, was Patterson. And for a second, nobody knew who had it. It turned out Tommy had it, because if Patterson got it, he was under the sticks. And the game went on, and then Peter Stringer made one of the most important line breaks of his career. He went through a line out, he offloaded to Jamie Heaslip, Heaslip scored, and that was the difference in the teams. That was Scotland done. And then, of course, we all remember Cardiff. Again, Tommy Bowe's great try to cross kick from Rog, but only 2 minutes before that, that half time we were behind, 2 minutes before that, Dricko had again literally grounded the ball on the tip of the grass on the goal line. It was the most minutest touch. And then Tommy got the try, and we still needed Rog for the drop goal. So, although if any one of those things had gone the wrong way for us, there was no Grand Slam. So the margins are that tight. Yeah. So things can fall your way, but you don't want to be doing that every week.
Yeah. 2009 we were also blessed injury-wise, I think, because Declan Kidney only had to make whatever 4 changes he made for the Scotland game just to rotate the squad.
Yeah.
This year we've had a lot of injuries, but we've dealt with it. What have you, as a former Irish head coach, you looking on at the depth?
There's really depth.
I think a bit of jealousy there that you've got.
Well, I think you should give credit for the academy structure.
Okay.
Is that the players coming from the academies were really delivering guys at a very young age, and probably the most obvious change for me, and you see them, is their strength and conditioning is so good now. And you see guys like James Ryan, you see there's even Jordan Larmour, who's a year younger. You see guys like Andrew Porter, fellas just coming through the system, ready for professional rugby. Now, if you backtrack that, it goes back to the schools. The strength and conditioning in the schools is superb, and the strength and conditioning in the academies is superb. It's very refined now. It's very streamlined, and I don't think the academies were as, I suppose, efficient 10, 15 years ago. They are now very efficient in delivering these players. Their recruitment systems are very good. Their talent identification is very good. So everything is more streamlined and more efficient. And so you're getting the process, guys coming through, like, really ready to play professional rugby. I mean, I coached under 20s years ago. Well, it was under 21s back then. And I had some very good teams. A lot of guys went on to play international out of it. But they looked like guys who just finished school, a lot of them. They were just beginning to, to develop. Whereas I saw the Irish under 20s a couple of weeks ago playing Italy in Donnybrook, and they all look like they could play professionally tomorrow, So that's a major step, I think. And that's why these guys just kind of slip in. And it's great because it brings an extra layer of pressure on the guys above them, which is good as well.
Sorry, no, just talent-wise though as well. So like, I can see where you're coming from with the S&C, but like, have we ever had the talent depth where we've been able to lose out, to still win games when we're missing Furlong, Henderson, O'Brien, Henshaw?
Yeah, Lyons is missing Lyons.
It's insane. If you just list those names for a country like Ireland, we can't miss those players.
If you look at the schools game, the calibre of the schools games as well is very, very high. Again, the programmes we've been running in the secondary schools now is superb. So guys are coming out of that really ready, and then they go into the academies, which again is the next layer of, along the strength and conditioning, is a skill development, and they're getting exposed to training in that professional environment. So like, the system is working. Like, we don't have a huge number of rugby players. So you consider the quality and the calibre of players we're delivering off a relatively small base is pretty extraordinary.
And like you said, how streamlined it has been, because it's less than 2 years ago that James Ryan and Porter and Stockdale were in an under-20 side that beat the All Blacks.
And to be fair, I think when those guys were at 20s, they were earmarked as special.
Okay.
Like, James Ryan has always been a guy that people said, yeah, this guy is going to play sooner or later for Ireland. Porter the same. Lauren were the same. Like, they stood out among even their own peers at that time. So there's other guys going to come through probably a little bit later. But these are the guys who are the bolters, which is good.
Like, Joe Schmidt has often been christened, perhaps unfairly, as being a conservative coach. How much credit does he deserve for bringing these young guys in, or is it the most obvious thing in the world?
Well, it's not the most obvious thing, and like, I've always been very reticent about criticising a coach about selection, for the simple reason the coach has more information than any of us. So he's the guy on the ground working with them. He sees them playing, he has them in camp, he works with them, and you get a sense of a guy if he's ready for international. You're never sure, never 100%, but on your best estimate he's ready, so you put him in. And sometimes to put him in, you need someone to get injured. Like, let's be honest, if Jarrod Payne was fit, or Gary Ringrose, Farrell wouldn't have got his run. Like, if Furlong was fit last Saturday, Porter wouldn't have started. So sometimes your hand is forced, but that's the way it works. The trick is, if you can, develop the depth so when your hand is forced, it's not a complete guess. And I think, to be fair to Joe Schmidt, he used the autumn very well like that. He did rotate a lot of guys in the autumn, and he did get a lot out of those games and still got the results. So when he had this kind of mini crisis in the Six Nations, it wasn't as big as it would have been if he hadn't done that.
So Porter had played so little rugby, professional rugby, as it was, never mind as a tight head, and then he comes in November when you're thinking that's probably John Ryan's slot, and then you see where it leads when it actually is needed in the Six Nations. We have him ready to go.
But that's the key of it. But to be fair as well, the credit must go to the schools and the academies for fast tracking these guys to that point.
Now, on Chris Farrell, we were talking here last couple of weeks ago, and we knew you pretty much knew that Farrell was going to play, and we knew he'd be fine in an attacking sense. But you did express worries about how he might cope defensively in the 13 channel. Now, we're at Balls very excited to get someone in like yourself who actually knows what they're talking about. So can you please tell us, defensively, did he do a good job?
He did a good job, yeah. He wasn't the problem in our defence.
Okay.
I think the problem in our defence was different. We can discuss that in more detail. But I thought he did very good. I think what was good as well is that Joe Schmidt was faced with a bit of a dilemma on the weekend as to what way he wanted to set the team up. Basically, if the game became very open and loose, certainly didn't suit Ireland. did not suit us because we know the Welsh would be more comfortable in that space. The other problem was though he had played a very direct style of game against the Welsh before, and it hadn't worked out. If you think of Cardiff, we just battered them in Cardiff. We couldn't get across the line, and our record of scoring tries against Wales up to now has been poor. But I think there was a change there. I think Wales are not the same pack of forwards they were. So I think he picked the right game plan. In terms of we have to go direct, but we'll have better dividends this year because this Welsh pack really can't match us. So if you look at the tries we scored, apart from Stockdale's first and last tries, his first try was a great short side play, magnificent pass by Sexton. But take the other 3 tries in between. Aki's try, Levy's try and Healy's try were all power tries. Pick and drive, very aggressive. And I think he backed his pack to bully basically Wales. Like he basically used Warren ball against Warren and very successfully. And it was the right way to go in that we didn't want that game to get loose because when Wales got to throw the ball around, they created a lot of problems for us. And it might have cost us at the end. So I think it was interesting that when you take Farrell in that context, Farrell was the right man as well for that. Like, I think if you have Payne or a Ringrose or even Henshaw outside centre, I think you have more options on the outside open game. But if you look at the first play of the day, scrum inside the Welsh 22, Conor Murray straight across the line hits Farrell up the middle and he ploughs through and we build a score off that. Again, every chance they got the ball in Farrell's hands and they got him at the Welsh over the game line and they couldn't handle him. He's a huge man. I think that's the biggest midfield with Aki and Farrell that we've ever picked for Ireland. They're huge, 2 big men. And it was that power game. And then you consider that Farrell, they used him because he's height, he won a kick-off.
Yeah.
You know, so...
That was when he could do no wrong when he won the kick-off there.
And that was good to get him into the game. It was good to get him into the game early, get him to get a feel for the game. But I think we went at Wales the right way. We went route one very aggressively. We built the team up that way. We set the team up that way, and it was very successful. And I think Wales, there was an inevitability about Ireland scoring every time we got 10 metres out. The Welsh just could not contain us. And that was the productive side of our game. That's why we scored 4 tries. The 5th was a gift, but we did get 4 tries based on that pressure game. And even the build up to Stockdale's first try, we had really pounded them in around the fringes, and that short side opened up.
What about defensively though? So, you know, you alluded to a little bit there. The second try, me and Gavin were here watching the match, and the second Welsh try comes in, we're just saying, why are we always so narrow? We keep conceding these same tries. And it just seems to me now, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that this shouldn't be as hard a fix if we're being caught the same way all the time. These lads are professional rugby players. They know how to defend differently than the one way. There's
a couple of things at the moment that's worrying about our defences. We're leaking tries, even against teams like Italy. If you look at where the source of our problem is, that we're too compressed. So our spacing's wrong. We're also overcommitting to the short side on occasions. But take Schindler's try, it was a classic. It's where the Welsh started on the right and they went left. But while they were going left, we had like 12 players inside the far post, which means there's 35 metres out there with a couple of defenders. They got down that flank and then they came back the same way. And we also managed to get 12 players inside the post again. And that's when Schindler walked in unopposed. The worrying thing at the moment about our defence is we're not missing a lot of tackles. Normally when you give up a try, you say, oh, somebody missed a tackle.
Exactly.
And that can happen. England missed tackles. That cost them. They basically missed tackles. But we are not missing tackles. We're getting systematically picked apart. And the narrowest sort of defence, it's very fixable. It has to be fixed. You know, the worrying thing is you consider Wales scored 3 tries, and at the very end of the game, when Anscombe threw that ball over the top and was picked off by Stockdale, if you freeze frame that, Anscombe had an option to go out the back behind Navidi to Cuthbert, or not to Cuthbert, to the flanker who came on, the Welsh flanker, Tipuric. Sorry, Tipuric. He had an option to go out the back to Tipuric, and Tipuric was around the corner with Schindler and I think Williams. It would have been a replica of Schindler's first try 20 minutes earlier, and that would have changed everything. That would have changed the whole narrative around the game. That was a grand slam gone. But if that was bigger, he would have gone out the back, I believe. But Anscombe went to go over the top, and thankfully, you know, somebody was looking after us. Stockton picks it out of the sky and has gone the other way.
Yeah.
But the point is that was a replica of Schindler's first try, and we did get too narrow. It was a problem against Italy. It's a problem going back a couple of years.
Going back to Argentina.
Yeah,
in the World Cup.
it was a problem.
It's systematic, I suppose.
Italy got a try like that against us at the Havelas Square End 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We got too narrow.
We were talking to Serge Betson last week, and he was he showered Andy Farrell in praise, called him one of the best defensive coaches in the world. And a couple of viewers are asking this question as well. Seamus Carrott wants to know: is Andy Farrell overrated as a defence coach? How much of this?
I don't know Andy Farrell. All I know is you can just judge the team on performance. He seems to put a lot of stock on line speed and getting off the line, and the line speed was very good early Saturday. Maybe the line speed's dropping as the game goes on. Maybe concentration drops, the line speed drops. But teams have figured out now that even with a hard line speed, if you throw what we call the way to break an up and in or an aggressive, is to throw a spot pass off the second receiver out the back. That's to stand stock and trade, how to break a 4 up or an up and in. You throw a pass off the second receiver out the back, and that gets round the corner. And you can try and go over the top like Anscombe did, but there's risks, as we know, on that. But he seems to put a lot of stock in that coming up and in. But when you think about it, teams are starting to figure out how to get around it. And he's got to now recognise that, and he's got to find a better way of spacing our defence across, so we're not so condensed that most of the team are inside that second post. That's problematic. I mean, and if that repeats itself, you can imagine Scotland. If you think last year up in Edinburgh, Scotland's first try, they got round the corner.
Yeah.
A flat pass, and Hogg was round the corner, and then it was curtains, So it still exists. We're playing this narrow, aggressive defence, and he may have to rethink that strategy for the last 2 games, particularly.
Yeah, you'd like to think that there was more of either a plan B or some kind of variation that you can play within the game, even rather than just like this is what we're doing. And then we have to change everything if we're going to go wide. Surely there should be some. Is it not easier to play a bit of slightly variation game?
You can, and teams do play. Some teams play up and in at certain times, and they'd have a call for it, and sometimes they play up and out. But the spacing's different, and you have to call it early, and then once you call it, you've got to back yourself. And you're hoping. It's like the NFL. Will the defence blitz, or will they play back? You don't know. And if you can get teams in that as a defence in that mode, the attack doesn't know what to expect, you can fry their brain. But if you lose that battle, if they then start to pick you apart, people come off the gas in terms of their line speed because they're afraid, and then the offence has the advantage. So there's that cat and mouse game going on there. But certainly I think, given that we've played aggressively up and in a lot and aggressively narrow, and teams are starting to pick it off, we have to revisit that, or he has to revisit that after the last 2 games. Doesn't mean he can't do that, but he has to be, I suppose, as you said, the capacity, maybe not to do that all the time, to play a slightly wider spacing, and be prepared to play up and out and use the touchline rather than up and in all the time, or up and at them,
Yeah. Now it has been confirmed by the RFE since we came on air that Chris Farrell sadly suffered an injury in training today. So the latest from the RFE is that he's probably going to miss the rest of the Six Nations. So,
is that right? I heard he got a knock, but it didn't get
it's been worse than we initially thought. So I mean, if Gary Ringrose doesn't come back, that we're down now to our 5th choice 13, who is probably Arnold. Is that? I mean, we don't really know. We know Arnold was around the camp.
I think Rory Scannell could do a really good job there for us.
Yeah,
I think he's been underutilised myself, but that's just a personal thing.
Yeah,
that would suggest to me though that not that they can control a Chris Farrell injury, but I would think then they'll probably take the risk on Ringrose if he's just about there. So.
Ringrose gets a game under his belt, he's certainly going there. I think that'll make the most sense.
It'll be interesting to see how that changes things up. Yet another injury for Ireland. England, Scotland. Rob Mulligan wants to know, Eddie, am I the only one who gets nervous when Scotland come to town? They played us very close, or they end up being close to us every year, and they were close against us during your time in the job. Is the Calcutta Cup going to be the extent of their year, or what kind of Scotland will we see in Dublin?
I think the best thing happened for Ireland on the weekend is that Scotland beat England, just even outside of the consequence for the championship.
Yeah,
I think now the notion that people will say, "Oh, yes, so Scotland coming to town," that's off the table. So, and I know the Irish players will be a lot smarter than that. I think Scotland now might start to believe their own press a little bit. They will feel pretty buoyed by this win. They will start thinking, "But I still think we're the better team." So I'm not saying for a second we can just write these guys. I think we'll beat Scotland. I think though, had England done a number on Scotland, as everyone predicted, I think we might have been susceptible. Because I think the funny thing about the England game was that I heard Eddie Jones saying during the week that they'd never trained better. They had trained superbly. They trained like the All Blacks or something. He said something like that. Yeah. And I said, because as a coach, like when we trained really well and we were playing against a team we were supposed to beat, I used to get awful worried. Yeah. Because I always talk about training well, but it's funny. Once you train really well and you're playing against a team that you should defeat, it's very hard for guys not to kind of just let things drop at that intensity.
There's a complacency sets in. Is that the right word?
It is, in the true definition of the word, it is a sense of complacency. But fellas aren't in their head going, no problem. They're actually thinking, no, we're there. It's almost a kind of a blind complacency. Okay. They actually they're not going around complacent in their heads, but they don't know they've become complacent. It's a funny thing. It's like
they don't get up for the game.
It's that 5%. It's only 5% of a drop in your kind of where you'd normally be, like, and that can manifest itself as a 20% drop in your performance. Yeah. Like it is like that small percentage drop in mental intensity is a massive drop in physical performance. So I think England trained so well, and everything was set up to go to Edinburgh and win comfortably and really set down a marker, that they kind of sleepwalked into it.
Would that explain England, the amount of times they either gave away a penalty or got turned over in the Scottish 22, or is that Scotland been really, really good at the break?
Well, Scotland have been really good. I mean, don't forget last year they did a number on us in Edinburgh. They did exactly that to us. Yeah. Like we kind of maybe sleepwalked into Edinburgh last year, and they just tore us up with the rock, like, and they chopped our ball carriers. We were very predictable who took the ball to the line. They chopped and they ran over the ball and they caused mayhem. Did the same to England, but England. Certainly, again, when you're going into a game and you're confident and everything's good and you're sure everything's going to be great today, everything's going to fall into place, and then things start to go wrong, it knocks everybody out of their cadence, out of their balance, and then you start making these uncharacteristic errors, like the ball gets passed into touch, or guys drop the ball, let one now drop it, and then a couple of penalties, and this kind of malaise spreads to the team, but this is not a good day. And the problem for England was that they could never get a grip on the game. Every time they thought they had a grip in the game, they lost grip. And as I watched the game, I just felt after 10 minutes into the second half, there's no way England going to win this game. You couldn't see where the momentum shift was going to come from to get England back. And I think the damage was done in the first half, 3 tries. Yeah. I mean, Scotland only scored 3 points in the second half, but they had won the game by half time. Unless England could make some massive momentum shift, and they couldn't deliver because their performance was so poor. Yeah. And I think that was their own doing, actually.
I find it impossible to separate Eddie Jones talking about England winning the World Cup and calling their substitutions finishers and all this perhaps overconfidence in the media with the fact his team then turned up and were complacent and not at the top of their game. How much blame is on Jones there for the game that he plays in the media?
Well, he's taking all the blame at the moment, because he's pretty secure in his position. But and I think he's fair enough. He's not. There's a lot of honesty in that. I think he does realise that he did get the build-up wrong. But I think the build-up they got it wrong mentally. Like, I don't think the game plan there was anything wrong with it. I think if they'd have played the following day, it might have been a different outcome. But they certainly got the build-up wrong, and maybe telling them how well they trained, how well prepared they were, they lapsed into a false sense of security. And then the other side of it is the guys on the other side of the line, like Scotland, going like, these guys put, I think, was it 50 or 60 points in us last year. If we don't show up today, it's going to be embarrassing in front of our own supporters. So these guys play kind of like mad dogs in a meat house, and they just tear into them and they knock them out of their stride. Yeah. Like Ireland used to do that. If you go back to the 80s, that was our MO. We used to just play with fear in our hearts. Yeah. And we just tear teams up, and some days we might beat England doing that, or scare the pants off the All Blacks, but if we played the following day, it'd be carnage. Yeah. So like Scotland would have. I'm not saying Scotland are like that now. They're a lot better, but there was a layer of that in Scotland's game that they knew could be the difference in getting England out of their comfort zone, and it worked really well.
Yeah, was it mainly mentality? Because I was reading Shane Horgan in the Sunday Times, and he said that perhaps we've been a little bit over generous with praise to this English team, that they've whitewashed Australia and they've gone backwards, they haven't gone forward since then. And
they have 2 major problems on the team.
Okay, this is what we like to hear now.
Yeah, one is they don't have a back row. With Billy Vunipola out, they have no idea what's going on. They don't have a 7. Like, look, Eddie Jones castigated Stuart Lancaster for picking Rob Shaw at 7. Who was playing 7
Yeah.
last Saturday?
Yeah.
You know, so they don't have a back row. If Vinapol out, it's all over the place. They don't have an open side. That's not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem is they don't have a midfield. They don't know what they're doing in the midfield in terms of who's their best midfield. Like, you've George Ford at 10, you've Farrell, Owen Farrell at 12. I think Owen Farrell's at 12 because they don't have any other 12, especially with Vinapol out. Or not Vinapol, but Tuolangi out. But the outside centre is a complete adventure. He doesn't know really where to go there. Like, I think Jamie George played there last weekend, was it?
Joseph.
Or Jamie Joseph
yeah.
played there last weekend. Ben Teo's come off the bench there. Neither of them are international outside centres.
Really, yeah.
End off, yeah. No way. Like, I certainly think Teo is more of a 12 than a 13. And defensively, again, he struggles in that area. He's a fantastic ball carrier. He's very powerful, but he's not a 13. And I think that midfield, that whole midfield structure, is a problem for him. And this is their third season under Eddie Jones, and he hasn't figured it out. So the back row is out of kilter, and the midfield's out of kilter. They're two big holes in their plan going forward. And there doesn't seem to be an obvious solution here. That's the other problem he has.
Yeah, we could listen to England's problems all day, but we are tight for time. Brief word, Eddie, on Jamie Heaslip. He retired today.
Yeah.
You gave him his debut. Where does he rank among the all-time Ireland number 8s?
Well, look, just look at his list of achievements. I mean, I was just looking at it and going, the thing I took out of it was there's nothing left for him to win. Yeah. You know, he's won everything. Like, he's won 2 Lions tours, 3 European Cup medals, 3 Six Nations championships, including a Grand Slam. He got in the tail end of a Triple Crown as well at the end of my time. He's won a few of the Magners Pro 12, whatever. Them, you know, we have
even a Challenge Cup.
They morphed, yeah. So, and 95 caps, 5 Lions caps. The guy's done everything. Now, having said that, it's tough when a guy has to walk away. That he doesn't call time himself, and that's hard. And just listening to the way he was talking over the last few months, he was constantly trying to get back. He was nearly there. He was nearly there. And the other thing you have to give him a huge amount of credit for is that since probably 2009 right through to last year, he has been the number 8 for Ireland. There's been nobody else really challenge him. Like, he had to fight through a kind of a back row malaise that included fellas like Anthony Foley was there, Simon Easterby was there, Alan Quinlan was there, David Wallace, Dennis Leamy. There was a plethora of really top end, and he had to, as a rookie coming in, he had to go into that environment, and eventually he wrestled that number 8 shirt away from Dennis Leamy, kind of around 2009 when he got into the Grand Slam side and then still won the first Heineken. Yeah, and he really has held the number 8 shirt from that period, from 2009 right through. That's a hell of an achievement, you know, a hell of an achievement. And he was also a guy that played a lot of 80 minutes. Like, he wasn't a guy getting reeled in, getting tired with 15, 20 to go. He was the guy that played right through to the end. There was other guys getting taken off. And he's had a limited number of injuries because he was so professional in his outlook. So, look, the guy's achieved everything. He couldn't have done any more. I suppose the only sad part is it's called time on him. He hasn't called time himself. That's all the time we have. Eddie, thanks so much for coming in. Mick, thanks to you as well. That's all for this week's Six Nations Takeaway with Carry Out Off Licence, Ireland's leading independent off licence. We're back in a fortnight, by which stage we'll have known which Scotland team turned up in Dublin. But until then, take it easy.